as a filmmaker and animator, and I wanted to help that. I wanted to change that. So I thought I was going to make one film. I put out a call asking for people who were interested in sharing their stories. And I realized the need was much greater than I ever thought. We got so many responses. Our interviews all lasted between like 3 to 9 hours, and we realized we had much more content for one film, and we decided to make a series of films. So today you're gonna see Family Rewritten, which is the 3rd film in our series. We're very excited to have Camilla here today. She is the subject of the film. We also know her story is one of many. It's not indicative of everybody's. And so we brought on a number of panelists who we're going to introduce you to later. And they're going to share their stories as well as part of the panel. So we hope you guys enjoy the screening, and we will convene after the screening for to hear more from the panelists. And with that, I think we can get started, unless anybody has any questions.
I never expected myself to end up in foster care, but they realized I wasn't just like running away from home. There was a legitimate problem going on. I would come home and there would literally be no food in the kitchen. I was losing a lot of weight, and I have cystic fibrosis, so my health was getting worse. Foster care helped me so much. Like, they validated so much for me. I didn't have to feel ashamed of my story. It doesn't change who I am, and it doesn't define who I am. My mom's like a brilliant, amazing person. She would translate books. She spoke like 8 languages. Nothing ever fell through the cracks with her. Like, she was always like the rock of the family. My dad, say for the first 8 years of my life, he was pretty much my best friend. My dad was an alcoholic, and he missed a lot of work. He was a cab driver, my dad. So, if he's obviously like intoxicated, he can't go to work. We were always like just barely making it. In my junior year in high school, in 2011, my mom, she lost her job over the summer. So the financial responsibility fell on my dad, and the burden just gave him a lot of pressure. He ended up drinking even more. It came to a point where we literally had no money to pay the bills. We lost electricity every now and then. So I would ask my mom, how am I supposed to take physical therapy that required to be used electronically? Because people with cystic fibrosis have this vest that basically inflates and shakes up the mucus. You really should be taking it every day. She would just be like, I don't know. And that was really scary to hear my mom not have an answer for me. It's important to realize that if you're struggling with your family and how a lot of kids in foster care are, you don't have to feel guilty for wanting to save yourself. My sister, Christina, she is older than me. She went to the University of Vermont. She was so excited just to leave. She didn't want to stay home and deal with the mess. There was a point where I stayed a lot with my best friend.
Hello.
Hi.
My name's Maya. I'm Camilla's sister.
I would sleep over at her house.
And yeah.
I always was really close to Maya's parents. Maya would bring money for me or lunch from home from her parents. I didn't like asking for help, but I wasn't really eating. My parents wouldn't eat at home, so it would be really dirty. There are dishes piling up in the sink. In a New York City apartment when there are bugs coming really quickly. We had pets too, so you can only imagine. My sister and I tried our best to at least keep our little corners clean, but it's just getting very unsanitary. I was coughing a lot more because people with cystic fibrosis have excess mucus in their lungs. That's when I would break down a lot too, and I would just say what's going on? This is getting really out of control. When I started my junior year, I had Miss Fink, and I had her for creative writing. The first day of advisory, she said, if there's anything you guys need me to know, to help you. So that night, I went home and I wrote this probably 4-page email to her. She'd be like, whoa, you didn't even eat dinner last night? Then she tried to get me to call ACS, but I was just like, no, everything's fine at home. We're just in a very rough situation now, it'll pass. I really tried not to rat my parents out and they're bad parents, but things just, got out of control. I tried to move in with Maya. My mom was home, and I told her, I really think that I need to just have a break. It didn't really surprise her because I was already not home a lot. But then the next day at school, my dad hadn't known about what was going on. He called the school and told them, I'm going to take Maya's family to family court. When he called the school, they told Miss Fink, and she was like, I need to call ACS. And I was like, shit. My parents are so anti-government and everything. This is not gonna go well, this is not gonna be a good idea. ACS is the Administration for Children's Services. They first went to my parents' home. They showed up at 4 o'clock in the morning, saw the condition of the house. My dad, he was really furious. He told them they kidnapped my daughter. I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. What if I ended up in one of those crappy foster homes? The next day, Tuesday after school, they showed up at Maya's parents' house. They told us I'm still 17. It's not legal for me to just stay there. We didn't really know what to do. First we were talking about adoption, but it just felt so unnecessary. They told us what foster care is. We just decided that it would be the best option for me. My foster mom, she literally helps me organize everything. Doctor's appointment, dentist appointments, prom. That's what I've been craving at home, and that's what I was missing in my old home. And she's just a blessing from the sky in a sense. All of these meetings my mom was invited to, but she didn't come because she just thought that these people were out to get her and tell her she's a bad mother. She didn't look at it as a helpful resource to me, a rebuilding of my life. When I moved out on November 7th, December 4th of that year was my mom's birthday. My sister and I haven't been home since we both moved out. So we just kind of thought, as hard as everything is, we have to go see her. We kind of went with the hopes of both of us have moved out, this is a really serious situation, so maybe we'll go and the house will be clean and my dad will be at work. We brought her like a bouquet of flowers and we were just like, happy birthday. She told us, I have to tell you guys something. Your dad is knocked out in his room. He hasn't been out of his room since the night before. My dad was an alcoholic his whole life, but we never, ever had to call the ambulance. But we just were really scared. We didn't know what was happening. We couldn't see anything. So we ended up calling 911. He was in the hospital December 4th on my mom's birthday. December 14th is when, first I got a call from my mom and I ignored it. And then I got a call from the doctor and I ignored it too. And then my sister called me, so I picked up the phone. It was 8 o'clock at night. I was finishing up my homework. And she was like, listen, we need to go to the hospital. It's something about Daddy. She's like, I really don't want to tell you on the phone. And I was like, just tell me, like, I need to know what's happening, like what's going on. I was like getting kind of scared. She was like, I think he passed away. With my dad, it was one of those things where I thought he would get better, like go to rehab. In a few years, I'd be able to tell him everything he missed out on when I was in high school. Eventually stop drinking and like be more a part of my life, but like that just never happened. I don't even remember the last time I told him that I loved him. I just think just because you're like biologically like made to have kids, like it doesn't mean you have to. Not everyone is meant to be a parent. My biological sister, Christina, she was asking me, how do you deal with the fact that like you haven't talked to mommy? What I would really want my mom to do is be able to accept the fact that things just happen, and if we never come to peace with that, we're never going to be able to restart a relationship. The whole transition of moving out of your family and everything, you do feel alone, you do feel abandoned. But if people like just constantly remind you that like they're there for you and like you're not alone. My foster parents, they really taught me just because you've had one biological family, like that's not your only chance. Today, I like the idea of sharing my story and writing about it because I really love to write. So I'm going with an English major. So the fact that now I can say, next year I'm going to college, I'm going to be there for 4 years, like that's really amazing for me. Since I moved in with Maya, I've gained 20 pounds, and my doctor's been really happy with me. I've been a lot healthier. In foster care, I've really learned like the many definitions of family. To be able to like have people I'm not related to and really treat them like a family is really amazing for me.
Bravo. You're on mute.
Yasmin, I was saying when I was on mute that you're on mute.
I just said I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I know streaming on Zoom is not ideal, so I hope it was viewable. But with that, I would love to introduce you to our panelists. We have Camilla from the film, and I'm sure you guys have questions for her. So feel free to put those in the chat. And then after we introduce the panelists, I have some prepared questions, but we can also get to all of yours as well. So with that, if Camilla maybe wants to start, I'd love for everybody to introduce themselves, give a little bit of, their backstory, and then for Camilla, if you could just give some life updates, because we started this foster care film series in 2012, and it took us a number of years, but the film was released in 2017. So there are definitely some life updates since then. So I'll turn it over to Camilla first.
Hi everyone. So I'm Camilla, and yeah, we started filming definitely a really long time ago. But I'm just first off like super grateful for being able to have had my voice kind of given a platform in this way. I think, as Yasmin said, you kind of found a niche of like a demographic of voices that are not really paid a lot of attention to. But a lot of things have changed. I graduated from college. I graduated from Binghamton. I had a dual degree in English and Spanish. And then after graduation, I moved to Spain to teach English for 2 years. And I realized that I really liked teaching. So I came back, and for those of you that might know the New York City Teaching Fellows Program, I got accepted into that. And it's crazy, life kind of goes really fast. So I feel like I just started the Teaching Fellows Program, but I'm graduating now. I just had this is what I was doing right before coming here. I had my last class where I did my presentation for my thesis. So I graduated, and I'm teaching Spanish now at a high school in New York City. So those are my updates.
Great. And congrats. There's some congrats coming in the chat as well. And before we move on to questions, let's have all the other panelists introduce themselves. And I know it's very hard to kind of summarize a foster care experience in 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, but if you guys could all try, that would be great. So let's start with Patrick.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Burns, and I grew up in foster care in the Oakland, California area. And then I aged out when I was 18, and I went to college at UC Irvine where I studied theater. And then I wrote a musical actually about my experience in foster care that I've performed all over the country and probably a dozen times. And it did run off Broadway as part of the New York Fringe Festival a couple years ago. And now I live in Sacramento, California with my partner, and I produce theater for a living, and I'm still writing. The musical is called From Foster Care to Fabulous. I saw a question there.
And feel free to put links in the chat, if there's any way to watch it still. And let's go on to Tony.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Hopefully. My name is Tony. I am currently an advocate and a vice president for a nonprofit that deals with foster care and creates a blueprint for success. I'm also a former foster youth, and I had a very multi-dimensional aspect before aging out. And I've completed my bachelor's at Western Kentucky University in environmental science and public health. And I went on to get my master's in organizational leadership, and I transferred to Georgetown and completed artificial intelligence, and now I am an incoming candidate at the Harvard Kennedy School. So I'm currently in Maryland. I'm actually leaving for Cambridge tomorrow. So, but so grateful for you, Yasmin, for just allowing me to be on the panel.
Thank you for being here. And Taylor.
Hi everyone, my name is Taylor. I aged out of foster care in New York City. After foster care, I went on to college in Greensboro, North Carolina. And then I started an organization for kids with learning disabilities called Great by Choice. And now I will be going to University of Irvine for my master's in public policy and education.
Great, well, thank you all for being here. I will start out with a couple questions, and like I said, everybody can feel free to put some in the chat as well. Obviously, we'd love to hear more about all of your foster care experiences. I believe a lot of people who are attending today are foster parents or kinship caregivers or adoptive parents. So I guess my first question is based on your own experiences in foster care, and if you could kind of elaborate more on those. Can you talk a little bit about your foster parents and like, advice for some of the people who may be just kind of starting out as foster parents? What worked, what didn't work, what helped you connect with the foster parents you were placed with? Maybe we can just go in the same order.
So I think that that's a really interesting question. The thing that I immediately think about when I think of my foster parents is I think it's really important for someone who is deciding to be a foster parent is to really understand like the best way they know how to communicate and find like really healthy ways to communicate. Both of my parents, even before I moved in with them, they did a lot of like DBT, family therapy. They're very into the fact that you should always be, anyone can benefit from therapy, whatever. So when I joined their family, they had a way of communicating with each other that really worked for the four of them. They went years to therapy, they did family therapy together, they each did their own individual therapy. So they really kind of like found a niche that worked really, really well for them. And then I think that in the beginning, we all kind of made our own errors, trial and errors and everything. But I think that they kind of thought, because it worked so well for them and it was such a like set up, like good run system, that I was just I was just gonna become a part of that and learn to communicate the way that they communicate and like, be the way that they are. But I like to compare it to the fact that like, if you're a puzzle piece of four people and another puzzle piece is coming in order for all of you to fit together as a new puzzle, everyone has to change a little bit, because if a four puzzle piece is a complete puzzle that works really well, there's no room for me to shape into it if they don't change a little bit too. So I think that the one thing you have to remember is, even if you are really good at communicating or you figured out a way that is really functional for you, the goal is not to make maybe your foster child or adoptive child or whatever to be the same way you are. It's supporting their journey to learn how to communicate best too, because with being in foster care comes a lot of trauma. So there's going to be a lot of hesitation, and for different reasons it might be really hard for a kid in foster care to communicate well. So the big thing as a foster parent, I think, or even just a parent in general, is to help your kid like find their voice and find the way that is healthy to communicate for them, because there's not just one way to communicate. And there's many different ways to communicate in healthy ways. If one thing works for you, it might not work for someone else. So the whole point is everyone just kind of growing and changing together, I think.
Yeah, and I think something that you just put really beautifully is to remember that while a child, so for me, I didn't go into foster care till I was 13, and then I lived in 4 homes. And I think it's really important that like, as a child who's been traumatized or abused is learning who they are, like any other child, they're still sort of unlearning what they need to unlearn, but it's not really that black and white. It's not like, like, oh, this is trauma, or this is a habit, or this is a learned thing. You kind of have, it's an intricate dance to figure out how a traumatized child learns who they are versus unlearning who they've become reactively to their situation. And I think that that's something that as an adult I've thought about a lot, and realized that, I had one foster family where they kind of had all the kids like live in a basement, and that was more about like making a check. And then I had like these really great artistic queer foster parents who were like, oh, here's this queer artistic kid, let's embrace that. And I think through each different home, I kind of learned different aspects of myself, but I think had like a social worker and advocate and a foster parent kind of sat down and kind of like looked at the situation holistically and talked to me about my goals and what I wanted. Maybe there could have been more of a plan rather than just like a plop me somewhere and then, well, now we'll get to know each other for 2 months and then figure out what's going on, if that makes sense. Some of that stuff can't be fabricated or rushed, but I think just keeping an idea of the whole picture is really important.
Well said. Tony?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed those analogies and just kind of the different perspective you guys were giving. As I said before, I grew up in a very multi, cultural foster families. African American and white foster brothers were African American, Caucasian, gay. And so it really just gave me that entire approach. But I know that what my foster parents did, they really, not just being there, but bettering themselves as foster parents. And what I mean by that is, new foster parents, it really is, tough when you're dealing with, if you have a first foster kid, and just trying to get their perspective and understand their traumatic experiences. But my foster homes were very learning. They really implemented teaching us and not just providing for us. And I think that is one of the key things that's still currently missing in sort of the foster care system is not just being a provider, but being a teacher. And it really keeps the foster parents up to date and informed on issues, cultural issues, traumatization, and it kind of creates a blueprint for them. So, if I was a foster parent, hopefully, one day, or even adopting, I really want to create that learning aspect so that kid can formulate a blueprint as he or she ages out. And I think that is very crucial for any development of a foster youth.
So I wanted to kind of piggyback off what Tony said, because I like that you said teaching the kid to kind of invest in themselves and learn who they are and things like that, because that was one thing that I really wish that was a part of my foster care experience. I was in foster care at the age of 2, and then I went home at 9, and I went back to foster care at the age of 11. So I realized while I was in care that the other kids around me, like the foster parents' children, they were able to be a part of art programs or dance companies and things like that. And I was kind of off on the side. And now listening to this made me realize that doesn't give time for a child to explore. It's almost as if you are in some ways building a human machine to listen and be a people pleaser and do what you say and walk in this, kind of tunnel vision way of just being treated or shown how they should be because those are their circumstances, as opposed to allowing them to exercise who they are and invest in who they are and allowing them to grow so that they can be ready for the world. One thing that I will say that I did notice, from my experiences in care, was one of my foster moms. She was a former foster youth, and she had not dealt with her trauma. So it was a lot of arguing in the house. I want my daughters to jump you if you don't do this for me. Oh, this. And it was so many traumas that she didn't deal with that she was pushing onto us and making us more traumatized than what we already were. Right. And then my next foster parent that I had, it was almost like a move-in babysitter situation. She needed a babysitter. She was going for tenure, and anyone that knows anyone on tenure, that's a hard process. And so she was looking for a babysitter. And since I was a part of one of the programs and something happened where she found out I was in foster care, it was perfect. It worked out. And people do things to benefit from other people all the time. People get married to benefit so they have a stable family. So now that I'm older, I got it, but I won't let things like that happen to me again. It wasn't until after I aged out of foster care and I went to college where this New York Times article came out, and a family picked up the New York Times article. And when they picked it up, they read about my story, and just so happened they lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they started to bring me groceries, buy me books, and treat me as if I was family. And I wish it would have happened while I was in care, but it didn't. But it happened. And so I'm grateful that there were people out there that are, or not a part of the system, but understand that kids coming from the system still need that love and support. And so I'm grateful for them.
Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, it's interesting to see all the diversity of experiences. We had a question come in from the chat, which I think is a great kind of piggyback onto my original question, which is to give advice for what a foster parent should do on the first day when, you know, a youth enters the home. And again, let's do it in the same order.
So I don't really know what I could invent for that would be the proper thing for a foster parent to do. I can tell you what my mom did. So it's really funny because I remember like a really specific moment, but basically she was walking me around the house and she was like, I think what I really liked about the way she did it was she was like, this is where like we're all gonna eat, or this is where you're gonna sleep, or this is where your toothbrush is gonna go, like things like that, just to kind of like make you feel like this is your home too. I think that's really important. And what I appreciated about what she did also was she's a very quirky person, but she made me, she kind of like gave me the tour, but like from her perspective. So in the bathroom, she has one light that goes above like where the sink and the toilet is. And there's another light switch that goes above just the tub. And the way that the bathroom is divided is that there's basically like a wall between these two lights, kind of like a little bit of a wall. So she was telling me in the middle of the night, if she has to go to the bathroom, she likes to turn on the light that is over the tub so that there's not a bright light on her in the middle of the night and it doesn't wake her up too much. And I don't know why, like this is just the one thing of that tour that I like, that really stuck with me. And I actually brought it up to her only like just a couple of weeks ago, actually. And it was really funny because she didn't even remember that she said that to me. But I guess what I'm just trying to say is just be your genuine self and, you know, do what you can to not only make them feel like it's their home, but, you know, maybe give them tidbits. Like that's what my mom did. And that's obviously after all these years, it resonated with me. So I think, yeah, exactly. I like that. She offered a piece of herself. She shared something with herself to me. And in the midst of like inadvertently making me know that this is my home. So that's what I liked about what she did.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, first off, let's see. So I did that 4 times. I would say don't have a ton scheduled that day, be around. I had 2 of the 4 homes where I was there the whole first day without meeting any of the foster parents. So I would say, like clear the schedule and make it not just the parents' job, but if there are other siblings or foster siblings or anybody else living in the house, like make sure that everybody's on the same page so that the burden doesn't fall on the foster youth. None of this like go get to know your new family, or you kids go outside and play and figure it out. You'll meet everybody. Like none of that. Like really, I would be very proactive about introducing everybody, letting them adjust to each other, not putting any pressure on the youth, because I think that's triggering and traumatizing. And I think any sort of group activity that's easy and people can get to know each other without tons of pressure, cooking together, planned activities, I think. And like you said, Camilla, sharing yourselves with them, with the youth, so that they don't feel like they have to do that first. I think that's really important.
You're muted, Tony.
Sorry. I was wondering if you were gonna call on me like no, I kind of got the perspective from the other 2 that were just speaking. Mine was very different. I was adopted and then put into the foster care system. And so I was adopted by a Christian family. due to some uncertain circumstances, I was placed in the foster care system. So my foster parents were African American, and I had, I had not lived with an African American family for the first time, and but coming from a Caucasian Christian-oriented family into an African American family was really a big eye opener, and also a just an identity awakening. So with just being there for the first time, it really was it just felt different, but it was more I knew the first day that not only was this going to change my life, but they also placed independence in a lot of us. And what I mean by that is sort of the responsibility that, not that you take care of yourself, but it really was a responsibility. They were very, yes, sir, no, ma'am. And I really caught on very quickly. But my first day, it was, you don't have to worry anymore. We got you. And, but it was this very focused environment too, as foster parents. And I give them a lot of credit because they were doing it for so long before. But it really did kind of put that, that sense of responsibility, and not only me, but I seen it in a lot of my other foster brothers too. And they were first day just telling me what to expect, what they expected, and what did I think I lacked too. And they were really about the teaching element, and I strongly I'm now advocating more on that principle of the teaching element, but that's how it was my first day in foster care, and I'm truly blessed by that. So that was my experience. Hopefully.
So I guess I'll talk about my adopted parents. Not really my foster parents. But I think that one thing that they did for me that was beautiful the first day they came to my campus is they just took me on a walk and wanted to know about me. And they let me know, like, Taylor, you can depend on us. You no longer have to be in a state of fight or flight or independent, and you're on your own and everything is all on you. It's on us. And so that felt really comforting. And that was my first interaction. And they didn't make me feel as if I was some show and tell piece where I was telling them what I was going through. Oh, this poor girl we met through the New York Times, and then showing me to a bunch of people. It was almost as if I was special and no one needed to know about their special gift besides us. And with time, they allowed me to open up to the people that I wanted to open up to. So in reality, it was kind of no expectations on my end. They didn't expect anything of me and I didn't expect anything of them. And then, which allowed me to be myself. And one thing they did that's like really small and kind of quirky, I've never had a picture of myself because I was gone from home to home since the age of 2. So I never had pictures of myself. And as a gift, they took me to a waterfall, and they gave me a picture of myself, of me like sitting or standing on the rock where the waterfall was. So that was a way to allow me to put something in my home and in their home to let me know that I was a part of their family and they were with me.
Thank you. We have a number of questions in the chat, so I'm going to do it a little out of order since I think this one makes sense next. Some of you have already touched on this, but are any of you still in contact with your foster or adoptive families? I guess Camilla, we can start.
Oh, my bad. I thought you said you wanted to go out of order.
Oh, I meant with the questions that came in the chat. Sorry.
So my foster parents, when I turned 25, they asked me if I wanted to be adopted by them. So I got adopted by them, and obviously I'm very much still in contact with them. I am not in my biological father, as you saw in the documentary, passed away. There's a lot of hurt, and you know, I've been dealing with a lot of like figuring out how to kind of forgive my mom without her being a part of that like communication of forgiveness. So I've had some feelings that I've kind of had to work through without her, because there's no part of her that really wants to like own up to anything. And in my perfect world, if I were ever to have some sort of communication with her right now, what makes sense to me would be that we could have, like, my mom was very much like, put everything under the rug and move on from it. Like, I never grew up with parents who took accountability for any kinds of issues or problems or mistakes they made, or any, you know, disagreements. It was never like, I'm sorry, this is what I did wrong. And I learned, you know, now with the healthier relationships I've had with adults in my life, including my adoptive parents, that, you know, adults are supposed to own up to their mistakes, right? They're supposed to own up, and they're supposed to navigate through feelings and everything. And this is just something that for many reasons my birth mom was unable to do. So I'm currently not in communication with her. I think, again, the majority of my work for how I decide what, if I ever eventually want to be in communication with her, has to come just from my own work and my kind of sorting out of it. If maybe like I can forgive her and move on in a way and rebuild a relationship with her, maybe one day in the future, that's something I would do. I never want to say I'll never talk to her again. But right now, like, there's been a lot of, you know, big monuments that happened in my life, you know, graduating college, graduating and getting my master's degree now. I got engaged. And my birth mom is just complete, like, I have her blocked on everything because she, you know, just does not, I don't have any communication with her. And right now that's just what feels right. I don't think that, you know, I mentioned this sentiment, but biology has nothing to do with what you owe to people. If they don't treat you well, if they don't treat you with love, like, you don't have to owe anything to them. But my biological sister, I am very much in touch with. She's still very much in my life. So yeah, I think I answered the question, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and for Patrick, Tony, and Taylor, if you aren't checking the chat, the question is now extended to be both if you're in touch with your foster or adoptive families and biological families.
Okay, so I had 4 foster families, and I lived with each of them for 1 year. And you know, I was a teenager, and I was sort of like a A+ teenager. Like, I was involved in everything. I got really good grades, but just like, you know, these placements are often very difficult. So the 2 of those 4 were temporary placements that lasted longer than they were supposed to. So I didn't really ever get very close with those parents. So I didn't stay in contact with them. My foster family number 2, I was very close with them, but it didn't end very well. They sort of used me as a road to adopting a baby. And then when they got their baby, they were like, thanks, it's been real, but you can go now. Which I can joke about now, but at the time was pretty upsetting. But humor helps us to heal. Isn't that beautiful? And then the last family I actually was very close with, although was also kind of used as a live-in babysitter. So when you said that, Taylor, it really spoke to me. I stayed in contact with that foster mother for several years after I was with her. But most of that time, I didn't realize she was being sort of emotionally abusive and trying to get me to be like her long-term respite care worker. Her son had lots of disabilities, and she kept urging me to drop out of college to like move in with them and take care of him. And I grew up in the Bay Area. I went to college at Irvine, which is in Southern California. So yeah, I know it's Irvine connection. So after that, I kind of had this big blow up with that foster mother after I got tired of her trying to get me to, like, you know, drop out of college. And so I didn't talk to any foster parents. During that time, I had some contact with my biological family. My dad was in and out of prison. He was a drug dealer. And my mom was a former meth addict who got clean while I was in college. And so we did reconnect. And then I have 2 biological brothers. And I stayed in contact with them for several years, and I'm still sort of in contact with them. But after 10 years in prison, my brother got out last year. So we did kind of have like a reunion, but then since then, he's kind of gone off the wagon again, which is really sad. So I haven't spoken to him since that. And then actually the most interesting part of all of this, and I won't take up too much time, but I went to college in Southern California, then moved to New York because I was going to, go be in theater in New York. And I did that whole thing. And then 3 years ago was offered this producer job at a theater in Sacramento. So with my boyfriend at the time, who was from Brooklyn, we moved to Sacramento, and I have a semi-adoptive family that's in Sacramento, so that made that transition a lot easier. But then we lived here for about a year, and then my mom actually became homeless and showed up on our doorstep and ended up living with us for about 9 months, which was really bizarre and stressful, but also sort of healing in a way, because I sort of learned more about some of her disabilities and shortcomings and how those things might have led her to use drugs in the first place. And so that was sort of like a Lifetime movie that I never asked to be in, but it was like, it was stressful, and we ended up finding her a place to live. And so I have sort of a little bit of a questionable boundaries with her sometimes, because I now understand that she's a little more disabled than I thought she was. So I luckily still go to therapy, which I think is very important. And I'm kind of finding balance with that I didn't have before, because I was in New York, so I was really far away, didn't have to deal with it. Then all of a sudden had to deal with it all the time. And now I've kind of found a good pendulum swing. So that's my wild ride right there. All right, Tony.
Yeah, I still have contact with my foster family. They really kind of instilled, and I was very blessed to have really good foster parents, African American and Caucasian, one in deep south of Kentucky. So it was, but my foster brothers also were just amazing. Um, uh, Unfortunately, not all of them succeeded. And that's just that's the brutal truth of it, of foster care right now. Of, you can have a lot of foster siblings, and you don't know what's going to happen. The aging out process is horrible. But what my foster parents did, my African American foster parents, shine light on racism. Coming from a white Caucasian family, it wasn't stressed. And I was very much I was shielded from a lot of that. And so, going into, an African American foster home, that really kind of opened everything up. And my foster brothers were tough, like really tough, like gritty, dog on dog, just, it was tough growing up. And especially in Kentucky, where you're, picking up hay in the summer, and after you get done picking up hay, you go play basketball, or, it was just a gritty type of lifestyle. And, I didn't really understand that my foster parents were gearing us for aging out. But, even, my Caucasian family, just tough, just mentally and physically tough as well. And, when I aged out, I was ready to go. I didn't have everything worked out, but as I told you guys before, the blueprint of teaching, really implementing those steps early on in a foster youth's life, it really does pave the way for later, whether they're with you or not. And so, that really, because of those things, because of those relationships I cultivated and allowed me to succeed later on, that only deepened my relationship with my foster parents. It was recently, about 2 days ago, it was a very special moment, after moving to DC and creating a new life, or I was able to tell my foster parents, I'm the youngest person, in my cohort at the Harvard Kennedy School. And that just kind of made their hearts melt. And because not a lot of foster youth make it that far. Actually, most don't even make it to college. And so, having that relationship with my foster parents, that that encouragement even after I aged out, that was so critical. Because y- I don't care if you're a foster youth or not. It's the support system. Somebody's encouraging you to keep going, and I literally had no one. And going to my first college was pretty scary. I made a lot of mistakes. Not nothing bad. It was mostly out of my control because I didn't have money. There was no money, and so you know, uh, my foster parents really made, they would reach out to me each week, how's it going? What are you doing? Have you executed the plan that you said you were going to do? And when you have folks who are like that, I mean, young people will say, "Oh, I don't need mom or dad at college." You absolutely do need mom and dad at college. And I think, I one day, my goal is to implement a system or a startup with that gives kids those tools that maybe they didn't have with their past foster parents, because it would be really cool, if we created a system that allowed foster parents to continue to keep supporting you, because that's the only way someone's going to reach their full potential. And so, yes, I still have a relationship with my parents, and I am very much blessed because I've been very much fortunate. And yeah, I don't have the aging out process or even the relationships that some of my panelists have spoken of, and I bless your hearts. But that is, you need a support system. So they kind of implemented that at an early stage.
So I will say that I do keep in contact with my adopted parents, and I here and there check on my old foster mother, even though I was a moving babysitter, and not because I feel I necessarily have to, but from each of those experiences, I've learned something. I've learned who not to be and how not to be in the world, and I've learned who I want to be and who the person I want to become in the world. So I do keep in contact, and regardless of who they are or how they've treated me, I can still be kind.
We have a number of questions coming in, and I want to make sure we get to all of them. So we'll try to be quick, but I guess we'll go with, what is one piece of advice you would give to a foster child?
That's a rough question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is trusting your gut, because I think I've learned a lot about how, despite whatever traumas may have affected you, at the end of the day, like, your brain is wired to protect you, whatever that protection might look like, whether you have to black out certain, memories or scenarios that happen to you. Like, at the end of the day, like, our bodies are literally constructed to protect us. So, sometimes traumas can make us believe things that aren't true, but if you listen to your gut, and if your gut is telling you that you deserve something better, and that this is not the love you deserve, or this is not the situation that you're meant to deal with or put up with, I would just say to a foster kid that you should always remember you deserve better, and always remember that you deserve love. And, maybe you haven't found it yet, or maybe your definition of love is really effed up right now, but at the end of the day, like, it might be with your foster family that you find that. It might be with another foster family, it might be with multiple foster families, it might be with reunification with your biological family, it might be, the experiences you go through in foster care that maybe you have to, as a lot of us have learned, like the things that you like and the things you don't like, or the things you learn about yourself, or the examples you see of what is good or bad love. And maybe it just takes until you're maybe old enough to make your own version of family, whatever it might mean. Like, again, we're all kind of echoing this sentiment, but family, it's cheesy, but family really is everything. Having a support system, and family is going to look different for everybody. So I think that a foster kid just has to remember that you deserve love, and you will get it because it's what you deserve. And that's just that's just it.
That's really well put and really beautiful. I would say, in addition to everything that Camilla said, which was so wonderful, to create, not just believe that you deserve better, but to learn how to create systems to make yourself achieve those things. Because I think there's this, at least where I come from, or where I grew up, is sort of, you kind of get into this habit of, and I've seen this with other foster youth who have aged out, you get into this habit of like, well, somebody will take care of this for me because I'm a foster kid. And so like, I can't do that for myself. So I need to find a way for someone else to pay for it, or for someone else to make that happen. But I think learning to manage your life and take ownership of your life is, as an adult, and like allowing yourself to name that from a younger age, and to look at maybe some of the habits or skills you've built in survival as assets, and to not be afraid to own that when others may try to paint you as a victim, I think is really important. And that nobody is above therapy. Therapy is super important, even if you don't think you need it. Everybody needs it, because everybody is walking around with something in their head that's not serving them. And to embrace that. And also this, that you don't owe anybody anything. I think I had a couple people when I was younger who helped me along my path, then try to like have me help them back. Like I'd said about the foster mother who was sort of like, well, now you get to come help me now that I helped you. It's like, well, that's not how that works. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could talk about that very subject for like an hour, like just, and also that money is important. And I'm an artist, so for so long I was like, I don't need money. I'm just art's gonna pay my bills. Like that's fine if you're, a lot of my colleagues, you know, will have very wealthy parents who are underwriting things for them, and then you can traipse around and say that money doesn't matter. But if you don't have, just like the emotional safety net of a family, if you don't have some sort of financial safety net, and that might not be a family for you, then you need to create that for yourself as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off what Patrick said. Money, yes. You know, even after my advice, you know, aging out of foster care was really kind of that eye-opening experience, because it's like, you know, you're in the jungle now. You know, there's nobody there to protect you, and you're really having to search for your next path, or whatever path you're going to take. And money was a big issue. You know, one of the things my foster parents told me, you know, you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan. If you don't have a plan, you know, you're going to wander. And it's all right to wander. But unfortunately, and the brutal truth is, a lot of foster youth don't have time to wander. You really don't have time to wander. As Patrick was saying, if your parents are rich and you have some sort of income, obviously you can go wander and do whatever you want. But, and I see a lot of that lately, but for foster youth, you really got to devise a strategy. And it wasn't until I was getting by, I'm true survivalist by the pure sense, but I'm now to the point where I'm finally, as you know, Patrick was saying, learning to be more stable, because it was a go for me. You know, parents instill grit, aging out process only, and it magnifies that, and you're trying to push yourself to get to that next step. So I think for foster youth, it's really having a strategy and a blueprint after you age out. And I wish, you know, sometimes I could go back in time and maybe I would have done that differently. But I'm so blessed to be where I'm at. But I would say the number one thing is you got to have a plan, and that plan needs to be, what do you want to do in life? What is something, and I don't want to say passion, because honestly, in today, not everything, a lot of passion doesn't always produce economic stability, but build yourself, become stable, and then venture out. I've always stressed that, and but my whole thing is to create foster youth who are aging out to have a blueprint, have a plan, have a strategy, and that's the biggest thing, because there's going to be elements that are going to come at you at all times, and you won't know if you have a plan and you have a clear goal. Anything that's in the way, you can take care of that, but you still have your plan. And so that's the biggest thing I would stress, to any foster youth is, I'm not telling youth to have a plan as soon as they get into care, but if you're still in care and you're about to age out, because it is so scary to be out on your own. I had $72 in Kentucky, and I was sleeping in my car in a 1993 Toyota Camry for 3 months, and I was trying to get a job. And if anybody knows about a job, when you put an application in, you have to wait at least 3 weeks. And after those 3 weeks, they wait another 2 weeks to get paid. And so you're in this survival mode, but it's because I didn't fully have a plan yet. I knew I wanted to go, but I didn't have a full plan, and I didn't take the implemented steps to get there, but I survived. I think foster youth need to have a plan, especially those who are about to age out. So if that's advice I could give foster youth and foster parents. No, they did not allow. I'm sorry. I just saw it is against. And just this is just real quick. In many states, most foster youth who do age out, they only get a limited amount of time to be in until they're 21, and then they have to age out. You can't go back to your family later on. It would disrupt the family environment of the kids still present. So aging out is a big issue. Sorry, I seen a question there, so apologies.
So for me, I would say, what I would say to a person in foster care is to choose yourself. I feel like sometimes when I was in care, I was so busy choosing what other people wanted, and I forgot to choose myself and the things that I wanted, and the things that could make me set goals for myself, or be mindful of what my goals were so that I can make it to X, Y, and Z. And then I would let them know that you hold the key to the things that you want. So if it is creating a new life for yourself, you can do that through reporting the things that your foster parent is doing and possibly leaving that home. If it's escaping the trauma that you're going through, you can create a safe environment with you and your therapist. And it's hard to find someone that to trust, but you have to understand that you hold the key to the people that you can trust. Because if you put up walls, you'll just be a person surrounded by walls, and you won't be able to get beyond that. So you have to really understand that you hold the key to those things. And also, like, being in foster care is a short period of your life. Like, it felt so long, and I couldn't see past that while I was in foster care, and I couldn't see me even accomplishing anything but being in foster care, because that was all I saw. The people that were around me told me I was nothing. The foster parents treated me like nothing. So you start to internalize those things. But once I realized that I had the key to feeling good about myself and being more than what people were saying, that's when I went off to college. And then I was able to see that there was a big gap between me and my traumas, a big gap between me and the things that I was afraid of. So yeah, that's what I would say.
For the next question, I'm just going to kick it over to Patrick first, because I know he has to log off a few minutes early, and I want to make sure he gets his answer in. And I'm sorry he won't be able to answer all the other questions we still have in the chat. But I wanted to ask all of you about your process of healing, and how a foster parent or social worker or anybody can support that. I know for all of you, whether it's making a play about your experience or writing or advocacy, you've all kind of done these amazing things, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process, and also if somebody helped support you in that process, or how a foster parent could encourage that, for somebody that is in their home.
Yeah, I think that's going to be different for every youth. I mean, for me, it was writing and performing. And I think that my last foster mother wasn't always supportive of that, because I think for her, like, theater and gay were the same thing, and she had issues about me being gay. So I think accepting, and I think this is an important thing for any relationship, is accepting what works for the other person, accepting for what works for that child, because it might be basketball, or it might be track and field, or mural painting. Like, I think people find healing through lots of different things. I also think that I started doing advocacy while I was, like, still in care. I would do fundraisers for foster care organizations. My show that I've done has always been a fundraiser. And I think that giving back to the community, it doesn't only help you heal, but it helps you find community, because when you age out and you become an adult, you're going to meet, it's much, what's a delicate way to put this, or an honest way? I met a lot more foster care alumni who didn't want to have anything to do with foster care, didn't want to talk to anybody about their experience, didn't want to be friends with other foster care alumni, because they just wanted to put it all behind them, which is, I totally respect that. For me, I found that to be like unhealthy dissociation for myself, to like be like, well, that part of me's dead and now I go forward, like that didn't work for me. So I think if they're interested at all in advocacy while they're still in care, if they have the capacity for that, that could be a really great way to build community and to find other people with similar experiences who have sort of a giving back attitude. And yeah, I am, as Yasmin said, I'm gonna have to leave a little bit early. I'm gonna put my social media handle in the chat if anybody wants, to reach out on Twitter or Instagram or anything, or I'll put my email as well. Like, I'm always happy to answer questions and bounce ideas off of and all of that. And because it's been really fun. It's been awesome getting to know the other panelists too. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here, Patrick. I really appreciate it.
Bye, Patrick.
And then we can go Camilla, and then Tony and Taylor.
I really like what Patrick said about the idea that A, it's finding community, but B, it's also finding community that can help you kind of process the feelings of foster care. So for me too, it was writing. I still am very much into poetry, and I ended up finding a magazine called Represent magazine that, that's how I got connected to Yasmin, and that's how I got connected to other foster youth and everything. And I think that what Patrick said about, it could be basketball, it could be whatever interest the child has. I think as the foster parent, it would be really great to encourage connecting that interest to also using that interest as a way to heal through the process of being in foster care. And, we're, especially in New York City, or if you're not in New York City, I'm sure in many other places as well, there's a community out there for anyone. So if it could maybe even be like foster youth who like to play basketball or play drums or like to write personal stories or like to do poetry or theater, whatever it might be, I do believe that there's a community out there for anyone. And maybe even you never know if you are maybe even advocating for the kid to create this community that doesn't yet exist, and you don't know who could be out there that can hear that or could need that as well. So if there's no group out there of foster kids who like basketball, maybe that kid can kind of try to create that or connect with it virtually at first. And then, you know what I mean? Like, I just think that if you can somehow connect your interest to figuring out a way to heal through it and process it and find a community of people who have gone through similar things as you, it just makes the experience feel much less alone.
Tony?
For me, I guess the healing process, it was Mine was deeply rooted in trying to not only find my identity, but also a sense of community. I did a lot of advocacy and organizing in Kentucky, and I thought, when foster care, when foster youth age out or graduate college, it can be a really difficult time finding a job or having kind of the opportunities to actually build a career. And so I kind of advocated and created kind of a cohort or community organizing for businesses around Kentucky to be able to really kind of invest in foster youth aging out of our local university. And as I kept going, when I moved to DC, I got involved in advocacy on the Hill, and I really started to understand that foster youth can do this. We can be successful. We can live good lives. And as Patrick said, also, I've met a lot of foster youth who do not want to talk about their experiences, and I'm all right with that as well. But I kind of had a moral conviction. I should do something for those who are struggling in the foster care system. And so I kind of I kind of got rooted into the sense of advocacy and organizing by, helping foster youth. And that kind of healed me as well, because it was like, I'm providing opportunities that weren't there for me when I aged out or when I was in care. And that really did, it healed a lot. And it's still healing. Because I'm a striver. I will grind it out, but it's also learning to finally live. Like, you don't always have to be on the go, or you can really just just kind of rest. But that being around other foster youth and helping them has healed a lot of that traumatization as well. So that's my answer.
For me, I think it was identifying what fit me. What was a good fit for Taylor? Like, how you go to the store and you get clothes and you're like, this fits good. And so it was about what fit me, and perfectly too. It wasn't like, oh, it kind of fit anymore. I was done with that. So when I realized the things that fit me, I realized those were the things that made me feel safe, comfortable, powerful. And it started when I decided to be truthful and honest with myself. Truthful and honest that I didn't have parents. Truthful and honest that I was a product of the system. And I guess just that turned into me starting to write my book now. And during the writing process, I had to realize being truthful and honest came with triggers. And those triggers meant that I needed to talk to someone, and I needed to be my most vulnerable self when I spoke to them. And so that was my healing process. And I think that if I told someone, I don't know how I would tell anyone how to heal, but I know that if I told them anything, it would be to express yourself in the form that makes you feel the most free, because that's what I did, and that's what helped me.
Great, thank you. I know we only have about 10 minutes left. We may go just a few minutes over if people can stay, because I do want to try to get to everybody's questions, but I'm going to try to respect everybody's time. And I know Zoom fatigue is real, so we will try to stay out of time as much as possible. I'm going to combine two of these questions and ask, how do you feel about being labeled a foster kid? And then also, if any of you have spent time in a group home or residential placement, if you could talk about that as well.
I'm
Can
sorry.
you repeat that?
Yeah, it's kind of
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to combine things for time. The main one, because I don't know if any of you have been in a residential treatment facility or group home. If you have, please speak on that. The first question was, how do you feel about the label foster kid versus saying like, you know, a youth in care, or not, you know, not labeling a child as a foster kid? Or does it not bother you?
Honestly, I haven't thought much about it, but I do, when Patrick started saying the idea of like, it's just an experience that we've been through. It's important and it shapes who we are, but it's not everything that we are. You know, so I think saying like a youth in foster care just kind of makes it more like this is a temporary, and this is not like you are a foster kid. I think that it sounds nicer to say it that way, but I never really thought about it that much before. I know that there's a huge stigma with foster care, so I think that as much as we can avoid, you know, kind of fostering that stigma, if I can even use that word, I think that it would be nice to do that. And I have never been in a group home, so I can't really speak on that second part of the question.
Yeah, I guess I'll go. I have been, you know, I have been in it before even transition to care, and it was dark. It was really dark. I did not like it. There was embarrassment behind it. Even using the word foster kid in high school was tough. But you know, I guess that's one of the healing traumas, you know, I've come to acknowledge, being in those residential group homes. I advocate kind of against them, but it was an experience. But even to this, see that youth who could be more open to, you know, healing, especially in school when foster youth are, you know, called foster youth. It is kind of it is embarrassing. I know that's how I felt. Maybe not, that's not how anybody else felt, but that's definitely how I felt, because I felt as if I was alone. So that's kind of what I have to say on that.
I don't think I ever felt embarrassed about the word foster care or foster. I don't feel embarrassed about the word foster youth, but I guess foster child. I did start to feel embarrassed in middle school because the foster parent that I was living with, her daughters would bully us by using that word. So it was almost like they use it as an abusive word. Like they would call their mom and say, your foster mom, your foster child just told me X, Y, and Z. Why did you have your foster child relay this message? So I guess that's when I pretty much started to feel uncomfortable about the word, but prior to, no. And I think that depending on how the word is associated or how you use the word, you can definitely create an abusive relationship with the person and that word. And that same foster home, that woman, she kind of put all of us in a treatment facility because you can make more money that way. So from my experience, all of like the kids in the house had gone to, well, most of the kids in the house had gone to one of treatment facility. And then I went to a treatment facility. In the beginning, I was sitting there and they were telling her, no, Taylor doesn't need to be here. You can take her home. And once the doctor left the room, she started saying to me, Taylor, well, remember when your mom used to beat you? Remember when you were molested? And remember these things? And so the nurse came back and I was crying. And she's like, well, what's wrong with you? And I don't, as an 11-year-old, I'm just repeating what she told me to say. So I think that both treatment can be helpful and it also can be abusive. And in my situation, use the word foster child were both abusive, and a treatment facility was both used to be abusive. So it depends on how you use it as a person.
Yeah, I think context is really key. I'm going to combine another couple questions as well. What are your thoughts on staying in foster care until you age out versus signing yourself out when you're old enough to do so? And then if you do age out, if you are aging out, where do you get support, financial, emotional, medical, time spent during holidays, etc.? And if you need me to repeat that, I know that was a lot, let me know.
I think that is a really tricky question. I don't know if I have a particular opinion about, whether you should age out or you should sign yourself out. I think that every circumstance is different, and it might be, it's important to talk about the fact that even to particular demographics of people of color, the foster care system can be a really cruel and nasty system. And I think that, whatever form, if the foster care system is treating you in a way that you're feeling supported and you're feeling that you're creating relationships with people that are loving and making you feel comfortable and safe, then I think that there's, do whatever makes the most sense for you. But if this is a system that is hurting your traumas even more, or only advocating for there's nothing that's getting resolved and it feels toxic, then I think that sometimes it makes more sense for you to exit that system and find support in another entity. So it's complicated. For me, it was extremely beneficial to stay in the system because, this is a lot. I wrote my thesis about this in my master's, that there's a lot of resources in foster care that are going unused because there's a lot of entities that don't communicate and work well with each other in terms of the foster care system and public schools or whatever it might be. So I remember when I was deciding whether I should age out or if I should stay in longer and take advantage of being in the system until I was 21. One of the things that they had a college counselor, and he told me that there are all of these scholarships and there are all these resources you can use that can be extremely beneficial to you, especially I was still in college and everything. But he was telling me something about 3% of kids in foster care were taking advantage of these resources. So I think sometimes there are resources that are just kind of not getting used for many different reasons. Sometimes there's unnecessary removal from homes. Sometimes the removal causes so much trauma and distress that the kid who is in foster care is not even being exposed to these because there's no good communication happening and there's no liaison to make that happen properly. So it's a complicated thing to say that, it just because it worked, it was something that I found beneficial and it really worked to my advantage. I wouldn't say that that's the situation that would happen for everyone in foster care.
Could you, sorry,
You
I
want me
didn't
to
get the
repeat the question?
yeah.
Yeah, no problem. It was, what are your thoughts on aging out, signing yourself out? What were your thoughts on staying in foster care until you age out versus signing yourself out? And then also, if you are aging out, where do you get support? Financial support, emotional, medical, what to do on holidays, etc.
Yeah, I think I stressed this and I guess 2 questions ago, but I took advantage of what the system had to offer. At age 21, I finally had aged out, but at the age of 18, I dedicated myself to getting an education. And that's only due. A lot of it was due to my foster brothers. They all decided the system. I didn't have it as rough as they did. But once you go through so much traumatization, the word freedom, it's very sweet. And so they ended up signing themselves out of foster care at the age of 18, but all of them failed and ended up either in prison or jail, and one died. And so, seeing that, I was like, there's just no way. And, I was taking some classes at a community college and I was working as a janitor, which is crazy. I was a janitor. I wasn't even having full credits. And, my foster parents were working with me. But there's only so much a foster parent can do with the resources they are given. Um, and you know, I worked that janitor job until I could afford my car. And after I afforded my car, then I started thinking about 4-year universities. And so I always felt that I was, you know, a year behind everybody else. Or, you know, and there was a lot of comparison and stuff along those lines. But, you know, aging out for me, I guess those times, you know, before aging out, because I dedicated myself to education, it gave me sort of a blueprint to follow, or at least cultivate. And so that was, I would recommend anybody, you know, it is very hard to find resources. I know for me in rural Kentucky, rural areas, I don't know, it's totally different if you're living in a city. Um, you know, living in DC now, just being able to network and connect with other people, that was something that was almost like a privilege, versus in rural America. You know, you'll go 10 miles and you'll barely see anybody. So it really depends on one, your environment, and or do you have anybody outside of your foster family that can support you or who can encourage you? And yeah, and and those were really important aspects that I learned when I got to the university. As I said, I was pretty much homeless, um, but I found people, friends who connected with me and, you know, really lifted me up as well. So, but it is very difficult to find that niche by just aging out. I would say, in I think anybody who doesn't have a clear plan or has anywhere to go, I know freedom is sweet, but really, staying in the system until you have a clear, definite plan of what you need to do, because it is very scary out there when you're on your own, as it was for me. And a lot of those things, once you do get out on your own, it makes you know, make it or break it. And so yeah, I think you know, anybody who's thinking about aging out should really think about those type of opportunities and scholarships in college. And eh, I finally had got my first scholarship in my graduate school. So these are things that could that are available, but they need to be stressed as well. And I don't think the system does a good job at stressing them. So
Um, for me, it was not as like, I guess like Camilla was saying, it wasn't like that's not like something I can just simply answer. My situation, my foster mother, she found a letter that I wrote about how I felt like a moving babysitter, and she kicked me out my first year of college. And I decided that, well, I'm already in college, so I can't sign myself out. I wasn't in New York. So that kind, I guess it was an option if I did it via email. And I just chalked it up as, I'm already here. Let me just see what happens next. I've gone this far. Let me just see what happens with the foster care system. Let me just see what happens next. And so that was my experience. And then my adopted parents, they came in and they started to support me. So my second year, third year of college, they started to really offer me that support that I needed, to, I guess, I guess God sending them to me to help me realize that keep going wasn't for no reason. To keep going wasn't pointless. So I started to just think about those things. Anytime I was in foster care in New York by myself, and out of nowhere, I had a cousin that lived there. So everything I was doing, someone popped up to guide me to my next steps. And so I decided that I wouldn't sign out, because I figured someone will come and guide me to my next step. And if no one does, I've taken myself this far, so just keep trusting my feet. And so with the support of all of those people that came to me along the way, I guess I started to trust them, and that trust allowed me to have a community, allow them to be a part of me, which allowed them to then become my community that I relied on for that emotional support and that mental support. And I hope I answered your question, because I forgot the next part of it.
You did. You guys are all amazing. I know we're running a few minutes over. I'm going to try to wrap up in the next 10 minutes. I just want to make sure we get to all the questions that have been in the chat. And I also want to thank all of you. Sometimes we do these things on Zoom and like the chat is silent. So I love that it's so interactive and everybody has all these questions. In fact, I was going to do breakout rooms, but we're going to skip that and get to all of your questions. So we'll do the last two. The next one is, what's the best way for a foster parent to introduce you to others when you're in public and meeting people? What's the best, like, most respectful way to do it? And then maybe you could also talk about, how foster parents you've had have done it if it hasn't been respectful.
I don't want to speak on behalf of everyone. I think that the best thing you can do is just say, this is my child, this is my daughter, this is my son, because, whether that is for this moment in time, like, that's what you are, right? And I want to, there was a question that I think kind of relates to this that I just want to address quickly, of what do you think that we should ask the foster kids to call us? I think that the opportunity to ask the kid what they want to call you could be really cool, because for me I was and again, for a lot of kids in foster care as well, you might still be dealing with your biological parents. So if you're calling someone mom already, maybe calling another person mom might feel really hard. Or maybe there's someone you're close to that you're already calling them like something, and if someone is telling you, you should call me this as well, it might be complicated. So you can say something like, I'm Kim, this is my mom's name. I'm Kim. If you want to call me Kim, if you want to call me mom, if there's something else you would like to call me, let me know, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable, and kind of put that into their hands to make that choice. But whatever they choose to call you, you're their kid. So whether you want to call them your daughter, your son, your kid, that's who you are in this moment. So I think that's the best that you could do.
I think for me personally, and I guess calling, hold on, say the question again, I do apologize.
No problem. What's the best way for a foster parent, when they're out in public with you, to introduce you to somebody? And I do like the follow-up that Camilla had, so if you can address that too, in terms of what you would be wanting to refer to the foster parent as.
For me, it was all about, the relationship I cultivated. First, my foster parents, they called me by my name. And even out in public, they called me by my name, and I called them by their name. But as time went on, it became mom and dad. Oh, my son. And I feel like that's a built type of relationship at first as well, and you may not ever get there. And you got to be all right with that. Especially foster parents, you have to be all right with that, because you are allowing this person into your house. You're their provider. So for me, it was just a built relationship. My foster parents never tried to diminish our presence out in public, or they were very much you know, these are my boys. Even when we were stacking hay in you know, in the deep south of Kentucky, my boys come to work. And those, and we did, and we were getting paid like normal young men, to pay for our basketball equipment. And that meticulous type of that type of environment or that type of situation, it really did cultivate sort of a family type environment. Like, oh, my dad, this is my dad, he's dropping me off to work, you know. And I think it's a built relationship over time. And they may never call the foster parent mom or dad, but that's totally fine, you know. So that's kind of how I view it. If that,
I guess I guess I'll just speak from my personal perspective, my personal experiences. I've always noticed that negative stories or drama is what like moves people. And while noticing that, I think that I dislike when someone introduces me as a story. Oh, let me tell you a story about how I got her. And everyone's like all ears. And it's almost as if I'm not human anymore and they have this story to tell them and I just disappear. But people are still human and they still have feelings. So you don't introduce people as stories and telling their background or the traumas that they face, especially not right in front of them. If you are that person and you're gonna do it, because people, for some reason, negativity drives, and that's what sells and that's what some people want to hear. But if you are that person, don't do it and be blatantly disrespectful about it, because no one's just this story that you just have to tell someone, especially not their traumas. So I would say, one, don't introduce them as a new story or new project of any sort. And then two, think about how if your daughter or your dad or mom was in this situation, how would you want someone to interact or take on the thing that they're dealing with throughout navigating the foster care system? So introduce them the same way you would a family member. This is Taylor. This is Camilla. How did you get Camilla? Well, this is our personal family's business. Or just, you don't have to immediately go into the story of the person and telling their business.
I think you've kind of touched on the last question, but I'll say it in case anybody has anything to add, which is just, do you have any advice for a well-meaning adult who is, you know, trying to ask questions on whether the topic is like school or health or, you know, staying in care or whatever it may be? I know a lot of times people may be well-meaning, but don't always say the right thing.
I think that this is something that I've learned in communicating with my parents, but also in communicating in the healthy relationships I've developed in my adult life, that basically if you approach a conversation as a reminder to the person you're speaking to that, you know, even if it's criticism or even if it's whatever it might be, you know, advice, you want to remind the person always that, like, we're not sitting on the opposite side of the table, and I'm not here to like tell you what you should do and lecture you. Like, I'm coming, you know, to extend this metaphor, I'm coming and I'm sitting on the same side of the table as you, and we're in this together. Like, I'm not attacking you. I'm here as a member of your team who wants you to be your best self, who wants you to like thrive. And there's just ways to approach that conversation, whether you want to give them advice or, you know, whatever it might be, to redirect them or, you know, tell them like what you think they should do. It should be like more, you know, this is what we can do to like help you, and make it about like, I'm here as your support and as a member of your team.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
No problem. If, you know, sometimes there are well-meaning adults who will say something, you know, they're asking questions about school or whatever it may be, and it doesn't always come across right. So what advice do you have for a well-intentioned person who's maybe talking to you about foster care?
See, I'm probably not gonna have a good answer for this one because I always have to talk to folks from different spectrums of, just the broad field of foster care. And I can't really give you a good answer on that one. It's because I'm always navigating folks, just their personalities or, how they're approaching the situation when it comes to the child welfare system. I mean, I guess I guess be authentic when you ask, like, I'm not, and don't try to, I mean, if you don't know the person very well, it's almost there's stuff you just don't touch upon unless you're like, that person extremely well, or because there's so much trauma in the foster care system. Really, I always think about what you're about, what you're going to say before you say it, or even ask a question. Don't don't just try to look for the solution. Just really, there's certain ways to ask a question, and but I probably won't be able to give you such a good answer on that because most of the time it's my job to deal with the bullcrap questions, and I kind of bounce them or kind of shift the conversation. So I'm probably not going to give you the best answer, but yeah, I do apologize about that.
I think saying what you said about, being careful what you say when you don't know somebody is a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, I think in today's society, I think in all issues we need to be very aware about what we say and how we say it. But I mean, if you're asking someone who was a former foster youth, I mean, that's a really lived experience. Like just saying you're a foster care, you were in the foster care system. You don't think about rainbows and balloons. So it is very, you just got to tread it very carefully. And I think asking that person more of what you would ask somebody who wasn't before you dive deep into, that particular subject. So.
Can you ask me the question again? Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. It's basically, people can be well-meaning, but they say the wrong thing. If you're reading the chat, people are giving examples of when it's happened to them. But so just advice for people who, maybe see a family that doesn't look traditional or whatever it may be, and they make some inappropriate comments, right? So just what advice do you have to people when they're approaching a foster youth or a foster family about what they can say?
I think
how they can say it.
I think that's situational because I think I'm not a person that likes a lot of conflict. So if someone directly came up to me and said something, then I would, I would protect my child by letting them know that one, the question that's being asked is inappropriate. This is not your place to invade on their personal space because the situation at hand, it's my job as a foster parent, but it's their personal space that you are coming into and questioning. So I would address that. And I think that if it was a really hectic situation, I would not involve myself. I would probably go home, wait until I was home and talk to my child and let them know that I basically didn't involve myself because I want to protect you, because my job is to protect you. If something happened, X, Y, and Z, you would be at risk. And I would let them know, no, regardless of what anyone say or what any questions are, I am in this with you. And since they are not in this with us, they wouldn't understand. And we'll let the people that don't understand be misinformed.
Thank you. I know we are well over time. There is some more stuff coming in the chat, and you guys are welcome to respond in the chat. I don't want to keep anybody here. Since we're like 20 minutes over time. I was originally intending to do a breakout room where I was going to ask you one question. I know we don't have time for that, but I'm still going to ask you the question and would love for all of everybody attending to just respond in the chat as we get ready to wrap up. And my question was, based on everything you've heard today from all of our amazing panelists, what do you take with you? What is one tangible thing that you can do to make the experience a little bit better for a foster youth in your home or at your agency? It could be a short-term goal or a long-term goal. But I know that might take a minute to think about, but just as we're wrapping up, if you guys can put those in the chat, I would love to hear those responses. And in the meantime, I just want to thank everybody for staying so late, for attending. I want to thank Camilla, Tony, Taylor, and Patrick, who had to leave a little bit earlier, for sharing their amazing stories and insight and advice. And I usually have to prepare a ton of questions to get the conversation going, but you guys were amazing, and it was hard to even get to all of your questions. And we're gone so much over. So I really want to thank you for participating and being really interactive with this. Finally, we have a short survey of our own. I know there is a conference survey, but the Foster Care Film and Community Engagement Project is doing a virtual tour all month. We are doing screenings for all sorts of different organizations, some public, some private. It's funded by the Brooklyn Arts Council, and we have a short survey where we can get feedback. And that feedback is really important to us for getting funding in the future, but it's also important so that as we do these events again, we can hear what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to hear more of. So if you have just 2 minutes to fill it out, we're going to put it in the chat right now. I think they just did. So on your way out, if you can fill that out, we would definitely appreciate that. And that's it. Thank you all so much. And again, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.